Hello there, you guys, and welcome back to this little practicing along with me session. We are going through a series in a book, which is linked below for you, called Old Masters for Young Players, Easy Classical Pieces for the Violin or Viola and Piano. So they're really beautiful pieces, and for those of you on Patreon, hello, there's a special picture with my notes to accompany this, because the one that we're going to look at today, which is number 2 in the book, it's called Andante Cantabile by Gluck. It's a little bit rhythmically confusing, and so we are going to go through them verbally, but there is a picture for you on Patreon, and the Patreon link is in the YouTube video description if you're curious. But hello to my patrons. And this week we're going to be working on the first 3 lines of this beautiful piece. We'll do the next 3 lines next week. All right, so grab a pencil and I'm gonna have you put in the notes that I have. So let's take a look at not the first full measure, I should say. The very first full measure starts on a half note. So we're gonna call that measure 1. Measure 2 begins on another half note, D. And this is where our rhythm gets a little bit confusing. So in the second full measure, I should say, we're gonna put above the half note 1, 2, and then over the next rhythm, you're gonna put 3 on the first note, which is a B, it's the 16th note. And then we're gonna write really small next to it, E and I just use a plus for and, because we need to subdivide this in 16th notes. So it's going to be 3E and but the way that we would play it is 3E and 3E and So let's go to the next measure. This is the last measure of the first line. We're going to put a 1 over the first note, which is the 16th note, and then same thing, we have a dotted 8th note after it, E and So we've got 1, E and then 2, 3. All right, so I'm going to play you this first line so you can hear it, and then we'll go through the second line. So this is in 3/4. We've got 1 sharp. So I'm going to be in the basic hand pattern on the G and the D string. I've got an F sharp. Father Charlie goes down and eats breakfast is the order of the sharps. So we got an F sharp for father. Low 2 on the A string and low 2 on the E string. I'm going to start by counting to 3, even though I come in on beat 3. Our first 4 notes there are 16th notes. We're going to come in on beat 3. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and I'll subdivide 1E and 2E and 3E and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3E and 1E and 2, 3. All right. How about we just take a quick look at the first measure? I didn't mark anything rhythmically in the first measure, but I just want to point out in the first full measure that we've got a little tiny note before the triplet, and it's just called a grace note. A grace note, they're all over in fiddle music. So if you know fiddle music, there's tons of grace notes in fiddle music, but it just looks a little confusing on the page. So the first measure is just 1, 2, and then on beat 3, start on your 3rd finger for the grace note, 3. All right, so if you want to pop any notes in there, let's go ahead and do that. But otherwise, we'll look at the second line. So the second line, we are going to put in some counting on beat 1 of the first measure. So in the first measure, you are going to write 1 E over the 8th note. And then we've got 2 16th notes after that. And so you have 1 E and 1 E and 1 E and all right. And if you want, you can write in the counting for the rest of that measure. I didn't put that in my little notes for you, but if you wanted to, just keep everything in 16th notes. That way you don't have to kind of keep going back and forth. So if you wanted to write in the whole measure there, you could try doing 1 E and a 2E and a 3E and a. I know rhythms are really confusing. They took me a long time to get. And my beloved teacher made me count them out loud and understand them, and that's one of the ways that we can actually learn how to read music. You have to learn, it's just like reading words, you know. We just have to spell it out at first, and it's really hard at first, but then you're going to start to get the hang of it, and it'll be a lot faster to comprehend what's on the page. So the next place is in the second line still, but it's the third measure. So the third measure begins with a dotted quarter note. So let's put 1 and 2. The reason why it's 1 and 2 is because we need to subdivide in eighth notes. There's 2 eighth notes in a quarter note, and a dot adds half. So what's half of a quarter note? It's another eighth note. So we got 3 eighth notes for that one. So when we subdivide in eighth notes, we're just going twice as fast as our beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Whereas before we were subdividing in 16th notes, which are 4 times as fast as the beat. So we were doing 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a. But eighth notes are just twice as fast as the beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and. So let's put over the dotted quarter note 1 and 2, and then on the next note, which is an eighth note, put an and. 1 and 2 and then we need to subdivide in 16th notes because we have a dotted eighth note. So how many 16th notes are in 1 eighth note? How many 16th notes are in 1 eighth note? There's 2, and a dot adds another one. So that's why we're subdividing this one 3 E and then the last note, which is the 16th note, is a. 3 E and a. Okay, oh my gosh, I know it's confusing. So that whole measure is going to look like this: 1 and 2 and 3 E and a. All right, so let me play it for you and then we'll give it a little try together. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to subdivide in 16th notes because I'm about to play something that does 16th notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 E and a, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it is pretty tricky rhythmically, isn't it? And the bowings don't really help, do they? So we'll take a look at it again, but let's go on to the third line. And in the third line, first measure, we have a 16th note and a dotted eighth note. So we're going to need to subdivide in 16th notes. So we got 1 16th note, that's 1. And then we have over the dotted eighth note, E and a. So the first 2 notes are 1 and then E and a. Then you have beat 2 on the quarter note and beat 3 on the next quarter note. And then in the second measure, this is probably going to be the most confusing one to explain, potentially. So in the second measure, we've got a dotted eighth note. How many 16th notes are in a dotted eighth note? Remember, how many 16th notes are in 1 eighth note? There's 2. So a dot adds the third one. So that means we're going to put 3 16th notes over the dotted eighth note, 1 E and then the next 2 notes are not 16th notes, they're 32nd notes. But they encompass the beat a. 1 E and a. Okay, so perhaps over the notes, let's write 1 E and then over those 32nd notes, starting on the first one, put a over that. Okay, and then underneath the notes, or if you wrote it above, pick another spot to write this next thing. What we need to do for 32nd notes, rather than thinking 4 times as fast as the beat, 1, E, and we need to think 8 times as fast as the beat. So rather than thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what you're gonna do is under the 30-second notes, they're the last 2. So it's gonna be 7, 8 over those. 7, 8, and then the rest of it before the dotted 8th note is going to be held for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. I told you that one would be tricky to try to understand. But regardless, the next note, which is a quarter note, has to begin on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3. 1, E, and 2, 3. All right, so we'll come back to that. The next measure, measure 3, this one's back to an easy one. We've seen this rhythm before. This is the 16th note tied to a dotted 8th note. So we got to subdivide in 16th notes. 1 goes on the 16th note, and then on the dotted 8th note, E and Then we have beat 2, and then we have beat 3. And then the last measure of this third line, this is also a little complicated. We know where beat 1 is. It's on the first note, the quarter note, 1. And then on the dotted 8th note, which is next, we got to subdivide in 16th notes. 2, E, and goes on the 16th note. And we can just stay counting in 16th notes for the next 2 notes, which are actually 8th notes. 3, E, and So that measure will look like this. 1, 2, E, and 3, E, and 1, 2, E, and 3, E, and So I will play it for you. One of the most important things that we have to do is get our kind of grandfather clock, you know, those clocks that swing back and forth. That never changes, but all the way that we can organize the beat and rhythm within those beats, there's all sorts of things that we can do rhythmically, but your beat has to stay very steady. So your metronome can be very helpful. So let's hear what the third line sounds like. 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, and 2, E, and 1, E, 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and I think I kind of messed that up a little with the counting. So the moral of the story, it is very tricky, and this is the perfect etude to practice. Even though it's a beautiful piece, it's a perfect etude to practice your rhythms. You know what I did when I was first learning rhythms? I cried and screamed and was so angry that I couldn't figure it out. I remember being young and just, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. So what I had to do, and it was very odd for me, because when I think about practicing, I want to play my instrument. I don't want to sit on the couch with my glasses and a pencil and write out the counting. I did not want to do that, because that was not how I practiced music, you know. But actually, we have to sit down and comprehend precisely how to do the rhythms on the page. And if you have to sit on the couch with a cup of tea and a pencil and put in exactly precisely how the rhythms are, then that's what we have to do. The easiest, well, there's a couple rules that you can follow. The first rule is that you're going to subdivide in the smallest rhythm. Subdivide in the smallest rhythm for either the section that you're in or the measure that you're in. So if we go back to the last measure we looked at, so third line, last measure, we kind of were making it a little bit possibly harder because I wasn't having you subdivide in 16th notes the whole time, but I think when I was playing it, I might have been counting in 16th notes the whole time. So in that last measure, to make your life very easy, a rule you could follow is to just, because the smallest rhythm is the 16th note, just completely count in 16th notes the whole time. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and so I say it in 16th notes the whole time. We could do that as well at the beginning of the third line. When we wrote it in, I just had you write in the 16th notes for the first beat. 1 E and then we did 2, 3. But beat 2 and beat 3 are probably going to be rushed unless you're using a metronome and you're really aware of your beat and your grandfather clock. If you want to be real precise, subdividing in 16th notes the whole time will be very good. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and does that make sense? So anyway, a rule, like I said, that I keep saying that you could follow is that you can subdivide in the smallest rhythm for that section that you're in, or the entire measure that you're in. You can also start subdividing in advance. So if there's a tricky spot coming up that's in 16th notes, but a couple notes before our quarter notes, you can start subdividing on the quarter notes. You know, you could count those in 16th notes, for example. So anyway, let's play through these 3 lines. I'm going to put on my metronome, and it just says with expression. So let's, you know me, I don't like to play too fast. Let's take a little bit slower. I'll put it at 60. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and it's a little fast for us. Let's try 50. Whoops, there goes my rubber bands. The rubber bands actually help hold on my shoulder rest, but I guess they wanted to escape, so. So I'm going to count for a full measure, and then I'm going to start subdividing in 16th notes on beat 2 and 3, and and beat 1 and 2, and we come in on beat 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1 E and 2 E and whoops. Let's try that again. So let me get ready. 1, 2, 3, 1 E and 2 E and it all makes sense. Like, it sounds like it makes sense, but just to exactly understand how to process it on the page, it's a little bit complicated, perhaps. So with that, I will let you go. Happy practicing and toiling away. And next week, I will see you for the last 3 lines. All right? Although, maybe you could try to put in the counting for the next 3 lines. And then when I see you next week, we could kind of see if you did it right or if you found another way to do it. Maybe you can try and put in some counting on line 4, for example. All right, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed the class today.